We are transitioning to AI for retention. Welcome, Kelley Hippler.
Thank you, Julia. Great to see you.
Great to see you. To all of you joining, Kelley is the CRO outside GC. And Kelley, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Terrific. Thank you, Julia. And first of all, before we jump in, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge you and the team for all of the amazing work you've done putting this 3-day session together. I know I'm speaking on behalf of the panelists and everybody out there who is listening and watching. I know we've all been grappling with what is AI going to mean for all of us moving forward, and to come out of Labor Day to have these thought-provoking conversations to help us think about how we finish the year strong and what we need to be planning for. Just couldn't have been better timed, but I know huge amount of orchestration. And so just want to give a little bit of round of applause and say thank you to you and the team for creating this learning opportunity for all of us.
Our pleasure.
Okay. And so sorry. So with that, just to quickly introduce myself, I am Kelley Hippler. I am so excited to be talking about one of my favorite topics, which is client retention. I am currently the Chief Revenue Officer of OGC, which is a virtual law firm. Spent the bulk of my career at Forrester Research, where I served as Chief Sales Officer and had to deal with a lot of these questions from cradle to grave on from generating the demand to closing deals, and then ultimately, how do you serve and retain those clients? And I know we've had some great chat already on the LinkedIn about the fact that I think retention is often an overlooked element. It is probably the most cost-effective way to drive growth for your business, and yet tends to be an area that we don't spend nearly as much time on. So I'm excited to listen to what this amazing panel is going to bring to us today. And Julia, I don't know if we want to start popcorning the introductions if we're ready to kick into that. Okay. So Yuri, I'm going to ask you to start off by introducing yourself, and we'll just have folks do a quick introduction and then hand it off to one of the panelists who's not yet had a chance to introduce themselves, and then we'll dive right in.
Yeah, absolutely. So, hey, everyone. My name is Yuri. I'm the CEO and co-founder of AI SDR. And basically, what you need to know about me, I'm a second-time Y Combinator founder, so most famous accelerator in the world. I was actually a lawyer, same as you, in the past, but I was lucky enough to sell my company to a bigger player and now jump into the space of AI and sales. And today, happy to be here and talk about how we can use AI in retention. Thank you so much.
Perfect. And do you want to pass the baton to one of our other panelists?
Yeah, absolutely. I see Beth next after me on the list.
My first name and last name both start with B, puts me at the front of the list often. Hi, everyone. I'm Beth Bauer, founder and CEO of Poseroy. I spent 35 years, my entire career, working for big companies in big data, basically leading data innovations at Merck MSD and at IQVIA. I've helped them and their customers and their organizations that are strategic partners to help shape their strategies and actions across the spectrum of the customer experience. So that focuses on technology, data, and the people, all of the people who actually participate in this in the journey together. So I'm super passionate about customer retention and the entirety of the customer experience, and can't wait to start talking with everybody about how to create that data-informed culture to make actions happen. Thanks.
Perfect.
I have
Christina. Oh, okay.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry,
go ahead.
all right.
Oh, good. Christina's perfect.
Okay, thanks, Beth. Hi, everyone. I'm Christina Kearney. I'm a former CMO and SVP of operations, leading cross-functional business and go-to-market strategy at companies like Infotech Research Group and at IDC. What I find so powerful about AI and retention is that customer retention isn't just about solving problems anymore. It's about how to use AI to prevent those problems from arising. So that's really what stood out to me in this session, and I'm really excited to talk with you all about where it's headed. So next, I will pass it off to Ori.
Thanks, Christina. Hi, everyone. I'm Ori Antis, the co-founder and ex-CEO of Staircase AI that was recently acquired by Gainsight, and now lead product AI and CS. Yeah, spent the past decade, testing AI as it kind of evolved in the world of post-sales, retention obviously being a really important part of it. But everything to do with AI in the world of post-sales. So excited to talk about this topic. I'll passing it on to David.
Hello, everybody from sunny Singapore, where it's 2 a.m. So apologies if I speak a bit slower than usual. My experience is largely in product and business design. I was at Samsung Product Innovation Team. I led Ernst & Young for 6 countries in the setup of digital transformation and the application of big data and analytics to our clients. And now I'm the founder of AI Path.1, where we actually stitch together customer journey mapping to help with prescriptive product strategy, and then a lot of automation of multiple workflows to align the engineering and the product teams, including the sales teams. And what we're really excited about is that if you bring retention as the core of your focus and monetization and that drive for profitability instead of only just new user acquisition and not caring about churn at that point, the experimentation that AI can exponentially deliver and make available to different teams allows you to create closed loop data for a continuously refined product strategy. And that's really our objective. And I think in general, a larger focus on retention in the world right now means it's quite an exciting time to bring more data to the process of that closed loop and making our customers a little bit happier. And so I'll pass it on to Rish, who's next to me.
Thanks, David. Pleasure to meet you all, and look forward to kind of talking and hearing the insights of everybody else on the panel. So I'm a former venture capitalist with Newland Ventures and then previously GVC Ventures. And currently I'm the founder of Malama Group, which we're looking to acquire small, medium-sized businesses, and essentially on the premise of leveraging kind of AI and automation to help improve the profitability and production of these companies. And so kind of been banking the next phase of my career on how AI can help and improve these businesses. And so I'm happy to kind of delve into kind of the ways that we're thinking about that. And I'll pass it on to Blake.
Thank you for that. Blake Williams, the founder and CEO of both Growth Story AI and Demandy.co. And I've spent about the past 9 years helping partner teams orchestrate intellectual property around their customers' journeys and sell tall, deep, and wide for all the good things and hopefully create advocates in the process. But excited to hear from everybody.
I think that just leaves me. So I'm Yuman Sang. I'm the founder and CEO of Turn Zero. We produce a customer success platform. And the idea is that we want to help B2B companies really understand their customers, the journey they're taking, optimize it so they get a great user experience, a great customer experience, and then you get great retention and good expansion. We've been really working on getting AI into our system, so a lot of investment there. So happy to have this conversation with everyone today. And I'll pass it back to Kelley.
Fantastic. Thank you all. And Beth, I was reminded my maiden name starts with an A. And so my joke in high school was I didn't graduate first in my class, but I was the first in my class to graduate. So there are definitely benefits to being at the front of the alphabet. All right. So we are going to dig in here and talk about retention. And through one of the sessions yesterday, I think this point really got hammered home. I thought Roy Vela, when talking about RFPs, did a great job talking about the fact that it's not about winning RFPs that's important. It's about actually being able to deliver on them. And so we've seen studies that talk about the fact that it can cost you 5 times more to generate and bring on board a new customer than it does to keep an existing customer. So wanted to just start by getting a little bit of a baseline from folks about what are some of the mission critical technologies and or processes that you've seen meet with success in trying to help drive client retention. Do you have anybody who wants to start us off with this one?
Sure. I can start with a short comment. So essentially, in both of my companies, I've been kind of obsessed with customer retention, right? And kind of for me, good customer retention starts with kind of superior customer support and customer care, which means responding super fast and being there for your customers, right? And both kind of in my first company now with AI SDR, what I really kind of pride myself on is a median response time for a customer request of 6 minutes, right? So like somebody writes to us like, hey, we have a problem. On average, on median, 6 minutes later, you get somebody you can talk to. And this is kind of empowering to a customer because I believe that the customer feels heard in that situation. And I think AI is accelerating that a lot as well with kind of AI support chatbots. There's an emotional aspect to it. Like, hey, is talking to like a good AI chatbot, it makes me feel kind of the same as talking to like a real human super fast. But I still believe that kind of a good AI chatbot is a huge win compared to like interacting with a human 4 hours later. Right. So and I think AI is building that bridge. And then I think the other important element of customer retention is expansion, right? So it's not only about keeping, but also expanding the existing customers. And I think AI could deliver kind of a lot of value in that sense as well, because what top companies are doing today, like Twilio, Segment, they are looking into tons of data about their current usage and pushing it kind of through Snowflake or kind of other data lakes into Salesforce in some shape or form, and then having people analyze them like, okay, like which customer is most likely to expand or churn and kind of what other products can we offer? AI can do that job much better and much faster, right? Like, oh, there's a spike in usage, like let's reach out. Oh, they fundraise a new round, maybe they will need new users, right? So being able to kind of analyze those kind of vast volumes of data and act on them super fast. I think kind of this is a perfect job of AI and something we're working on today. So those are my kind of 5 cents.
Terrific. Thank you for starting us off. Ori, and then we'll go to Beth.
Yeah, so I think if I go to basics for a minute, I think when you have a customer, you need to be able to communicate with them. So I think communication systems is kind of a layer, and within that, I think we're seeing everything from email that's been around for many years to maybe more kind of modern channels like Slack or Teams and other chats, and of course Zoom conversations and so on. So I think there's a layer of conversational. Then there's a layer of measurement. If you're in SaaS and you have, if you're selling a product that is, you have analytics around, that's great. But if you're not in SaaS, you might not. Or if you're in, if you're kind of on-prem, so I think that really depends. So there's a layer of I would say, collecting of information, measurement, and then there's a layer of analysis, which I think Yuri spoke a little bit about. So once you have all this, it's an analysis and kind of responsiveness around that. And I think that in previous times, there was a kind of a system of record, a CRM, a customer success platform, a place where you kind of aggregate all this, and from there you can kind of both share information and then start to operationalize on it. And I think that the big opportunity in AI is around that third layer, which is basically once you have collected and once you have a way to operationalize on it, where can you get those quick wins or those gains? Because people can do that. Obviously there's challenges around that, but those would be kind of, if I were to build a business today from scratch, and I would make sure that I have a way to communicate, I have a way to collect, and I have a way to analyze.
Okay, great. Thank you. Beth?
I just wanted to add to this that we really need to start thinking about how we bring various metrics together in this experience, that customer experience is from the moment you begin to talk with them and hopefully for forever, right? And so customer retention isn't just about keeping the customer today, but it's about having that strategic partnerships with the right customers that actually will lend you to understand when you're approaching the end of a particular product life cycle and needing to create the next product life cycle. And they can help you to do that as well. So beginning to actually leverage AI across the entirety of the communications with them can allow us to begin to understand what problems are they suffering from? What do they like about working with us? What do they not like about working with us? And how can we leverage all this knowledge, analyze some of those conversations and interactions to be able to help us evolve ourselves to meet their needs in the future? There's one B2C example that weighs in here beautifully. Verizon at one point, it hid their call number for customers because it was very expensive to answer all those phone calls. Well, there's no better way to actually lose customers than to not have them be able to call you. You need to have interaction with your customers and you need to hear them.
Absolutely. Thank you, Beth. Blake, did you have your?
Yeah, I did. So I think the one key thing for everybody listening is that there's been AI for a while, and I think that a lot of times when we just drop AI, everyone jumps to GPT modeling, but there's like random forecasts. There's like a random forest. There's one big thing about AI is you end up with those AI or like beer and diapers situation or milk and diapers, whatever it is. It can ask the questions that you don't know to ask if you use unstructured learning. So I think, especially in customer success, when we talk about, like Yuri was bringing up, looking at that whole trajectory or the longitudinal record of what we know a customer may do, say for HubSpot, go from sales hub to marketing hub to X hub. And we've seen 180,000 customers. Just like you go through that progression, we kind of know what the integrations look like, where your friction points are going to be. We can get in front of these things instead of just being reactive. You can be proactive and lead them along this growth journey, assuming that you can segment and all these other things appropriately. So it's another key advantage is to go on that offense instead of waiting for the problems to happen.
Yeah, great point. Thank you, Blake. David.
Thank you. So I think it's really great that we brought up the metrics, and I'd like to add to that, what is the purpose of the metrics in the ongoing development of the product? And these metrics, especially if they're couched or collected as leading indicators, if you really understand per use case within the company, the AI is what it's really amazing at now, is that we can develop incredibly detailed use cases for multiple personas, multiple ICPs, multiple stages, customizing that for the size of the company, the state of the go-to-market, the state of the product market fit, that kind of exponential personalization of how our sales, customer success, product development teams can understand the customer. And then also with that same kind of improved process and personalization for the internal company operations and workflows. So now the engineering team understands the implication of a piece of research or a piece of customer feedback or a cluster of feedback and so on and so forth. So I think the metrics are the empowerment of the organizations. You can't fix what you can't measure, right? But also, we're not in that vacuum. Also competitor action, personalizing for the engineering versus the product versus the sales team. What does that mean for them? And creating these very sophisticated dashboards to actually turn data into strategy, into operations, and solving that strategy into execution gap. That's what gets us quite excited.
Excellent. That's great. No, and I do think, there's a lot of data and information around what your clients are doing. I think it's about pulling it together and helping to inform what is the next best and in some cases most cost-effective action for whether it's a CSM or support person or account manager to be able to take. And so curious how folks see technology evolving, how support folks interact with clients, things like health scores or other ways to help drive both prioritization as well as the quality and level of the interactions that they're having with clients. Christina?
Hi, yes, I think that, building on what Ori said about the essential layers and elements, we also should think about the cycle of engagement for a customer. So onboarding, it's so critical. And I think for many years, it was thought of as an afterthought. It was like, great, we got the customer. Now, who's talking to them? What are we saying? So I think there's just so much opportunity making that first interaction as a customer the best interaction, and also making sure that the customer gets value immediately. And from there, moving to engagement, making sure that there's healthy product usage. We're understanding how they're using the product, what the frequency level, what the user base looks like within the account. And then, also retention and expansion, how are salespeople using this information and getting access to this information to find out opportunities, for upselling and cross-selling. And then lastly, advocacy. So, how are we looking at sentiment analysis and, analyzing that to make sure that the customers who, whether looking at reviews or looking at comments that they've made, we can target and identify those customers as potential advocates. And it's so powerful in all of these areas across the customer lifecycle.
Yeah, no, those are so important. And I will say, especially if you're in sort of a hunter-farmer model, I think there's no worse client experience than a rep chasing somebody down at a quarter close to get a contract in, and then it's crickets because the account hasn't transitioned, the deal came in, everyone's high-fiving, but you haven't actually kicked the relationship off, and there's no worse way to start a relationship. So appreciate your highlighting that. Yuri, so you've got your hand up next, and then we'll go to Beth.
Yeah, thank you so much. I just want to add kind of to the onboarding and time to value. I think those are kind of two super critical metrics. And for us personally, kind of AI was a huge unlock in onboarding. So essentially, our process is kind of customer subscribes, we jump on onboarding call, and then we kind of start researching a bunch of different things about their kind of value prop, things like that. It all used to be kind of a human-driven process, right? So there's a call, there are notes, there's then analysis of the notes, and then there is manual kind of research of kind of value prop websites, kind of key points, etc. And I think a month ago, a new kind of platform that allows to build super complex kind of nested prompt flows launched. And I automated that entire function end to end, right? Kind of from taking high quality AI nodes, exporting them into analysis, then doing research. So nested prompts, like 5 levels of complexity, overall kind of set of like 30 different prompts working together. But the entire process was automated end to end. And now what used to take kind of 4 hours of human work takes 6 minutes of kind of fully automated AI prompt. And our customer kind of time to value reduced from kind of like 2 weeks to a week, thanks to that, right? So it's possible now. It's not perfect yet, but the path now exists that has not been there before. And like, I'm very excited about it, and want to make you excited about it as well.
Awesome. Beth, and then we're going to go to a question that we've received from our audience. So Beth.
Awesome. It sounds like I'm following purposefully right after Yuri, but the comment that I had is related to creating a form of customer data platform. And a lot of people think that that's just an evolution of a CRM, but it's much more than that. So we have all of these analytics happening in different silos, and that allows us to actually have a whole slew of variety of both leverage points and pain points that if we can begin to put together, we can actually not only identify next best engagement actions, but next best capability actions for our own organization. Thank you.
Terrific. Thank you, Beth. All right, so question for the panel. So I know we started off by talking a lot about responsiveness, and I know a 6-minute metric was put out there. And so the question was, couldn't AI reduce the speed to interact down to instantaneous? And moving forward, is 6 minutes going to be enough? Blake, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, I'd love to. I've been interacting with Stripe and Figma and a few others that I'll just call out directly, but good Lord, if there's a huge opportunity, don't show me your FAQ. Don't give me another Academy video to watch. Like, help me extract more information about the solution that I'm seeking on my way to getting to a human. And just let me know that that's going to occur and what that timeline looks like, as long as I'm being communicated to clearly about that, instead of being redirected to go do more work that's not my job. There's a massive opportunity to do that. And I think a ton of businesses, as a best practice, use that as a default. And it's just like the absolute minimum that you could do if you were trying to welcome a guest into your space, right?
Fantastic. And I think that's a key differentiation between actually using the technology to help versus the hiding the phone number because you're trying to manage your costs. Yeah. And so thank you for teasing that out for us, Blake. David.
In some of the previous sessions, I've started hearing us start talking about the digital twin concept. So let's say the version 1 or the version 2 chatbot that we're currently at, right, essentially is the glorified FAQ. It's got RAG. It searches for the right answer for that question. But once we get to the point where the intelligence is cheap enough, and that's one of the primary issues, and you could be speaking to somebody with the experience of an engineer who was translating in real time to a product person who was also your CSM, who had intimate knowledge of your digital twin as a company, and really being able to not only troubleshoot, have like full information, but also help you understand the rest of your company. And in adoption, which is critical for engagement, which leads to retention, in many of the organizations that I've worked for as a consultancy, we were helping very large organizations understand their company, do onboarding for new employees, do transition management, and so on and so forth, and bringing so much more to that experience with that digital twin concept. So really value adding to that interaction and not just solving a pain.
Excellent. Thank you. Others want to weigh in here on that question? Ori?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's hard to kind of define, a metric that's right for everyone. Is 6 minutes enough, or is it? I mean, it really depends. I mean, if I can't log into my system and it's mission critical, then yeah, it's probably too slow. But if it's a strategic question that I'm going to deal with next week, it's probably fine. I do think AI can speed up things a lot, but I think it really depends on the task at hand, and I think that's where we're seeing it. Right, we're seeing success more in kind of support, technical level, where it's more scripted, where there's a lot of data and there's a proven outcome. Right, I can't log in, I need a new password. The simple stuff. But when it gets to more complex stuff, I think AI is still struggling. And that depends on, both the organization, how much data the organization has, what kind of solutions can you actually prove that are working. And AI is amazing. It's not magic. It needs a lot of work and maintenance. So back to the question itself, I think that the opportunity to speed up things is really important, and I would put a lot of focus on responsiveness in a service organization. And I just say, think about your personal interactions when you're talking to someone or asking a question. If they respond quickly, it's usually a very positive experience. You want your customer to experience that too. And I agree. I think Blake said that you want to communicate the expectation, right? Is it going to be, an hour, a day, or so on? But that first response should be really quick.
Excellent. Thanks, Ori. Beth.
One thing that I just want to add, this is such a great conversation, and it just comes to mind, some lessons learned potentially from financial industries. If you're a gold status member on a credit card, right, you're going to get a different call in line, right? So we need to be able to think about who we're talking to at the customer. And we also need to be thinking about where the customer is in their journey, in their experience with us and in their experiences overall. And depending on what's happening with that customer and perhaps the totality of that customer, right? Because if there are multiple interactions in the B2B situation, if now this is the 7th person calling from that same company, in 2 days, perhaps it's time to get off the chatbot, right? And so understanding not just the individual person, but the totality of the customer that you're talking to, it's so critical. because they're all going to talk, right?
Yes.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. Blake, did I
Yep.
see your hand up?
Yep. One last chime in here. I think the other thing is that traditional strategies for retention ignore what I think is like people love to learn from other people. They like to learn from their peers. And the more integrated our technology is, especially with everybody adding their own AI into things, it does create a little bit of complexity. So once you get beyond password and things like that, the next best solution is to maybe think about the problem in a decentralized way versus everything has to originate from inside the company from a solution to that decentralized path where we say we can have some of our best customers and advocates and people already crushing it heavily involved in our community and then enabled to either co-create that content with people that need to learn or just drive it on their own. But I think that we're missing a big sphere around us of influence that can drive a ton of value without us having to go in and know what question will be asked or what the answer ought to be.
Great, thank you. I'm going to go to Rish and then want to click into some of those community and other concepts there. But Rish, yes, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, I just want to add a quick note. I think we mentioned a lot of positive attributes that AI can help with retention and customer success, but it's really key. I think it's the obvious point that doesn't often get done. You need to train the data on good training data. And if it's not trained on good training data, oftentimes you will get responsive, you will get generic or bad results, which is even more frustrating, and you'll lose the reputation of the firm. So I think it's very key to ensure that you are training the data on effective data that is great, that you can build, the appropriate responses that's personalized, can hit the right points. And then two, I think we're not at the stage yet where things can be completely automated. So being able to have that human interaction in place that can interpret the data that otherwise, and AI maybe cannot interpret appropriately is a very key component right now, at least too.
No, that's a great point and had me sort of thinking about, you've got these pools of data. And I think traditionally a big part of, client success and client success efforts have come down to your tiering strategy for your clients. And so how do you make sure that the technology can sort of discern some of those nuances to get to, like you were talking about, so your best customers, and how do you ensure that the data actually helps you to do that and doesn't take you a step backwards in your efforts to do that and actually homogenize your service delivery? Any thoughts on that?
I can fire back. I think,
Please.
there's again, if we're going to dive into that community aspect, it's a whole bunch of typically unstructured data, but it's dealing with a wide variety. And usually what we're trying to do with training data is to capture at least a more robust circumstantial evidence and, that question response deal. So a community becomes a great place for that to kind of take place. And even if you're training on it, it'll at least be a reflection of reality, reconciling that with what you actually want to have happen and what actually happens. I think that creates a good point of friction or contention for you to figure out where to invest, either driving more of the conversation or helping that along so you can manufacture more training data kind of asynchronously. But I think that's one way to try to get those lines to meet as you go. That's obviously a project. But.
Yep. Very helpful. Thank you. David.
I'd like to bring up a best example, right? That gold status. If you're an airline and somebody's on, premium status, gold, platinum, and so on and so forth, and the cost of serving falls to zero, essentially with AI, what happens to customer expectation? Right? Because now the customer knows, because they're reading Forbes headlines, etc. Everything, they've dropped their headcount by 17%, etc. And the competitor decides that that is how they're going to capture market share. How are we going to differentiate for the premium service? Are we going to have homogenized services that you mentioned? That's interesting because that is one pricing play. But it's an opportunity, but it's also a crisis for the innovation of service and the innovation of product. And it does mean that very rapid copycats can come into the market, and maybe not for airlines, but for a host of other products and services, that's going to be a period of churn. I think we're going to see at the top of whether it's the NYSE or in mid-market or in SMEs serving SMEs.
Great point. Yuri.
Yeah, no, I think coming back to kind of community and kind of different levels of service, the thought that kind of immediately comes to mind is that talking to a human is going to be a premium experience, right? And I think that is actually where communities is going to play a role, right? I don't think that training, support, and community data is the best idea because usually it's messy. I agree with Blake that it's real, right? But it's messy. And the goal of the community is to kind of drive this social interaction between people and make them excited about different things that they maybe were not excited or were not thinking about before, right? And then customer support at its most basic level has to be structured, right? And it has to be accurate. And I think what's going to happen is that AI is going to evolve. Those kind of super basic requests that were mentioned will be kind of fully automated. I think they are mostly fully automated even now. They may be just going to be served in a more user-friendly, kind of communication-friendly way, not like, do you have this problem? Yes, right? So more conversational. Then the scope of problems that can be solved that way is going to broaden. But then when you go and buy into like the gold level, like platinum support, then you get invited into community where you have kind of champions driving that community, sharing ideas, inviting to events. And that's what becomes a new gold standard for support, where not only you get instantaneous support and be greatly communicated to, but that through customer support, they actually get a team of people who are using the same product as you are and help you enjoy the experience of the product beyond the features, right? I think that's what's going to happen.
Okay, great. And you, I see you're off of mute. Did you want to add to this one or comments on any of the discussion to date?
You're asking me? Umon?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, Human. Sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I mean, I'll add. I mean, I think a lot of the conversation is fairly forward-looking. I think in the next 8 to 12 to 18 months, leaders are going to be asked for efficiencies. They're going to be asked to be 30 to 50% more efficient. And I think you really have to think about how AI is going to help you reach those goals, right? And I think those are the near-term goals that you have to worry about. Whether there's completely automated CSMs, bots. I mean, those will happen. Those will absolutely happen. But on the way there, I think it's sort of the blocking and tackling of AI. And I urge the folks who are listening to, every day, think about how do you take 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 60 minutes out of the day of the people who work for you, right? And it's everything that's silly from, using call summarization technology to follow-up email to automation to, summarizing account briefs. All these things I think are really important. And I think, you give yourself a really good metric. Don't give yourself these kind of long-term metrics of automating everything. Like how do you get 15 minutes out of your CSM's time, 30 minutes, 60 minutes? I mean, that's my advice for the folks who are listening in.
Great. Yeah.
I just want to add on to the end of that. This is kind of my favorite topic. It can't be just one metric. It's like you're on a balance board, and if you put one metric, you're going to end up like this, and something else is going to go out of whack. We see this frequently where potentially two sets of metrics that two sub-organizations in their silos are working toward, and they're in conflict with each other. New customer versus existing customer can end up with two different rates. And maybe that's part of it, is just segmenting your customers to understand that there should be two different rates. For example, the 6-minute question. If you're a brand new customer, man, it's going to take a lot longer than your 6 minutes because you haven't had the experience. You're going to have more problems. They're going to take longer. Somebody who's calling, for something that's a lot simpler, Well, maybe it should be 1 minute because you should have been able to answer it just like that. So being able to understand the contextualization of what your metrics are actually looking to do is going to save you, because that Verizon example, their goal was to be as efficient as possible, cut those calls down, and they got it down significantly at the sacrifice of their business.
Yes, no, I think these are great points. And even Yuman talking about, involving your reps and your CSMs and figuring out where you can shave time, it occurs to me that as we sort of talk about the rate at which these things are going to change and how much harder it's going to be to maintain that competitive advantage, how do you bring your teams along so that the culture and the level of service that they then deliver actually supports and amplifies what you're trying to do versus be perceived as a threat and then undermine it. Christina, I see your hand up there.
Hi, so I think this is at the core of a trend that's been happening for a lot of years now, and it's really the unification of go-to-market, and that's across marketing, sales, customer success. And just to, piggyback on what Beth was saying, and also Yuman, I think the metrics that a company chooses, in their journey with AI are so important. And it's not just about efficiency, it's about revenue growth, efficiency, yes, also product quality. And how can you use the data and the analysis from these tools to make your product better? Yes, to save time, but also get new ideas for new products. And so for me, I think Kyle from Copy AI brought this up yesterday. It's, my advice to people out there is to look for AI solutions that you can leverage across functions. And, I think that with the customer success area, it is cross-functional by nature because it's the customer experience. So, I think that, if you're kind of comparing acquisition investments to retention investments, 9 times out of 10, you're going to get a much bigger return to profit margins, lowering customer acquisition costs and increasing your customer lifetime value by investing in these customer success solutions.
Terrific. Thanks, Christina. David.
I think at the board level, it's going to be quite interesting. And I always talk about the top 20% of an industry separately from the 80% of the industry. And at the board level, they're going to be pushing for those efficiencies that we've just touched on. And in the pursuit of efficiencies, we're probably going to go through that trough of disillusionment where the inefficiencies are going to cause pains in other parts of the business. For example, if we're trying to get unit economics and trying to optimize that kind of profitability, does acquisition and retention get pushed more to marketing? Does it get pushed more to sales? Do we become more product sales hybrid, etc.? And in that, the culture change and the impact on my job and my role in my department, what happens? And as long ago as 2017, we were using machine learning to augment the sales experience. So we had commercialized a patent in which we had multi-to-multi negotiation for oil brokerage. So instead of trying to simulate a perfect oil broker, what we would do is that the system would monitor all the oil brokers, and whoever was performing the best, their strategy, their pricing, their key value proposition would be communicated as a sidecar to every other individual. So nobody felt threatened by the technology, but instead felt empowered. And overall, the organization was in, sort of like putting together a strategy and making that available in real time. So I think those two things, that pursuit of efficiency, changes to roles, the pressures on the organization, you're going to see a very stark difference now because you can't add AI and tech to a bad process and a poorly devised strategy. Just doesn't help. So I think you're going to see a big difference of people where the CFO is the best friend of the CPO, of the chief product officer and the chief marketing officer and whoever's in charge of sales. And those organizations are going to create refined processes, not trying to improve the current process, but really saying, how do I, change the process entirely? We're going to not only do steps concurrently, we're going to jump steps entirely instead of troubleshooting and having better troubleshooting on calls and bringing that down to a 1 second response time. but how do we do preventative maintenance, preventative support, preventative apology coupons, and trying to improve the experience in a sort of a jump rather than incremental improvement.
Excellent. Thank you. Blake.
Yeah, just to pick up on David talking about the efficiencies and then Christina on the unification to go to market. When we think about how people use our applications, it's never just all in one, right? Unless you have a massive platform like SAP, but even then, there's built-in points of friction on things that got left off their product roadmap. And so there's partners, right, that obviously sit on top of the same workflow that every persona owns and will use a whole stack to go to market, right? Or just a function of content creation is going to have 7 apps in that, right? You don't have to solve the problem again yourself. Moving from that centralized to a decentralized solution set, you can now piggyback on the AI that everybody else is using to achieve the inefficiencies that are experienced either before, during, or after they use your product in whatever that workflow is. So I think partners are going to be a massive way to really accelerate not only your access to new audiences where there's an ICP rich environment. It's going to reduce your CAC and all these other great things, but it's going to offset that customer roadmap so that you get way more integrations. NRR, GRR goes through the roof. And again, if AI is the answer, then you might as well have 7 AIs in play, or at least a palette of those that you can start to pull from. So decentralizing how you think about solving that customer journey and experience problem is going to accelerate the time to value for customers.
Great. Thank you, Blake. Yuman.
Yeah, I think there's some conversation sometimes about CS or the retention teams falling under sales or marketing because of AI. You know, I think marketing teams and sales teams are having the exact same conversation. Like, are they going to be obsoleted, right? Like, I think every department within the organization that deal with a lot of knowledge, deal with customers, are all just thinking about how AI is going to help them. I don't think CS or retention teams are any sort of more vulnerable or not. I do think actually that the work that our teams do can really be helped by AI, and you really have to focus on that. But I think the future, when AI first hit, one of the things that really freaked me out wasn't so much how's AI going to hurt my company, is did I build the right company? Is my company now the right company? But all the people that I have, the SDRs I have, the CSMs that I have, the support people I have, like, did I just build a wrong company, right? And now I have all these people doing all these things. Now the good news, I think we all have time to figure it out, right? I think it's not a cliff. It's really a long slog up a mountain. And we'll figure this out. But I think everyone's having this conversation. So I would not be, overly stressed as a CS team or a retention team that your job is more vulnerable than the next job over in sales and marketing.
Fair point. And glad to hear and see that you're thinking about how to try to future-proof for your company and your employees there. So that's fantastic. Christina.
Yes, just to add on to what Yuman and David were saying about, we really need to have a first principles approach, white piece of paper, looking at our company processes. And I think about the CRM solutions that came out decades ago, and how much evolution is happening with low code, no code, basically looking at the different functions and making them more modular, and companies that are really in tough competition with those legacy solution providers. So I think that that's going to be a major shift and change into how we think about the unification of go-to-market, what that looks like to enable buyers, not to sell things to them, but this theme of enabling buyers on their journey will look very different. Pulling in what Yuri said about community and learning from peers and how we all learn in the future, it's just going to look very different.
Excellent. Thanks, Christina. I'm going to go to Ori, and then we've got another question from the audience that we will get to before we head into a wrap up.
Yeah, thanks, Kelley. I actually think there's a sense of urgency. I think there is no time to wait to make a change. If you're not already kind of starting to use AI, speak that language, change your processes, I fear like a lot of companies are going to be, are going to fall behind. So there has to be a sense of urgency, both on an individual level, as a person. If you're not fluent in what's happening in AI, if you're not using generative AI, if you're not, then start. That's my first personal recommendation to everyone out there. The second, I agree 100% that there's a unification to go to market, right? I think that we created those silos partly because of just challenges, not being able, right? The same person can't, generate the lead, go and sell, and then go do post sales, right? But with the power of AI, that potentially could be there. But I also agree that that's a little bit of a leap right now. There is some ground to cover. And in that respect, I say start kind of with a very fine, refined project. Before you go wide, I would say there's a lot of data in your own organization that you can use today. We talked here about communication data. We talked about, the ability to generate insights quickly. I would say before going out and, connecting a lot of different sources of data and building complex data structures, which are great, but take a long time, your organization needs to see quick wins. And therefore, you need to look for solutions that can kind of give you those first insights or those things really quickly. You don't want to get to a year's, long project, and then everyone kind of loses momentum. So, those are some key aspects. I think that you need to address today as a leader, but also as an individual.
Great. Thanks, Ori. All right, we're going to go to our question for the audience, and then Beth, I'll come back to you. So, question is, could AI get so good that it crosses the chasm and customers can't even tell whether the support agent is a human being or generative AI? What do folks think about that? Beth, you want to take that one to start us off? Oh, I think you're still on mute, Beth.
Yep, sorry about that. That new question is both a positive and a negative, and the answer is yes, I think it can. And quite frankly, part of our conversation before about the number of minutes and how long, one of the key things, if we all think about our own customer experience of why sometimes a call takes so long, is the person who answered at your company, right? That they don't have the access to the right information, et cetera. And so I think it's possible that AI can do potentially an even better job, and AI in many instances, frighteningly, even in medical scenarios, has more empathy sometimes than the humans. So that's something for us to think about, because we think about humans having a lot of empathy, but AI is being trained to even be more empathetic. I want to just tie one thing related to that, to the ending of what was just talked about, because coming from the big data space, one of the magic things that always happened in my world is we thought strategically about what we can achieve today versus what we want to achieve tomorrow. And you can always get dollars if you're going to promise a return, in the next quarter, in the next 6 months. You almost never get dollars if you're going to talk about what's going to happen years from now. But what you can do is use the dollars that you get today to strategically build foundations of what is going to be needed. Everything we talked about requires the hard work of understanding your business and taking in more information that's very time consuming and hard. Find a way to use your dollars today that provide immediate return to be able to hit some of those strategic foundational issues that have you positioned for tomorrow.
Great. Thank you, Beth. Yuri, over to you.
Yeah. So on the question of whether it's going to get to be indistinguishable, I'm pretty confident it will, right? So currently everyone in the kind of customer support and kind of retention space is focusing on making sure it's able to kind of handle and answer as many questions as possible, right? So, and it goes to kind of broadening the data set under the kind of model and the agent. And then the next kind of iteration will be how to make sure it kind of understands properly and kind of answers nicely, right? So managing the emotional aspect of the customer support. That is not there yet. Well, at least it requires a lot of configuration, right? That has to be kind of very strict, but it's going to be there, because kind of something that kind of immediately came to mind is on email communication, right? We are getting closer to that point, right? Because sometimes we get emails where the recipient says like, oh, thank you so much for taking so time to kind of craft this kind of nice personalized email. And in the end of the day, I know that it was not a human that crafted that, and I know that the time spent was like a second, I guess, right? And we're gonna get there on customer success as well. It's a question of not if, it's a question of when, and pretty soon in my kind of. Yes.
Okay, great. Yuman, what's your take on this?
Yeah, any task that has the word agent in it probably should be gone, right? Travel agents no longer. Real estate agents are kind of starting to go away. Purchasing agents are no longer, like, basically agents are there to help you do generally a sophisticated task. And the more, and by the way, it's really just between you and the outcome, right? Whatever that outcome is. And so I think it's always a good thing to try to get rid of as many agents as you possibly can. So I would not be, if it's indistinguishable, you've done your job, fantastic, right? And so I would just go whole hog and, like, let's try to, bring the agency back straight to the person who's trying to do the task, and then get a human being out of the way. So, I just think it's a different way of thinking about it, and how you should approach AI and deploying AI to your customer base.
Great. No, and I think to Beth's point earlier too, I get the sense that a lot of companies have sort of slowed down their hiring so that they can redeploy some of those funds into some of this technology to sort of lay that groundwork there. David, I know you had some thoughts on this topic as well.
Yes. And so when we're developing the strategy for our clients, we always encourage them to think not just about the efficiency of a single step, like how do we improve that interaction and the time for interaction, but the entire process. So it's not ridiculous to start thinking that we might not have to impress a customer in a customer interaction, because the customer will be using his own personal agent, and he will say essentially, Siri, right? Go get that refund from that airline for that flight that I couldn't make last week, right? So in that response, the customer experience is the seamlessness of that being carried out on his behalf. And for our clients, we challenge them to say, how far into enabling that for the customer, and not just waiting for the rabbit R1 promise to sort of manifest and become, fully functional, leaving aside, people's reactions to the stage of that technology, but it is going to be, a relatively mature product within the next 12 months. So as companies then will have to say, how far can we enable the customer to have that automated process, but also in that case, where do we invest more or less? Because if some interactions now are automated, how then do we have a disproportional impact on the experience if so much of that is automated and no longer human to human?
Great question. Great question. Ori.
Yeah, just back to the question that came in. I think it's the famous Turing test, right? Like, can you understand if it's a machine or person? And I say I'm not sure it really matters, right? I mean, I think sometimes it's okay if you get a response, as long as it takes you to your outcome that you're looking for, that answer you need. And sometimes you might want a more friendly or human interaction. It really depends. I think one thing that we've learned, years in AI, is you need to test. You always have to have an hypothesis and just see what's happening in the field. You might be surprised and find out that certain types of tasks that you assumed people would want to interact with a human are actually fine doing that with an AI or some kind of a machine-based response. And some things might surprise you in the other direction. But I wouldn't cancel either of them as better.
Kelley, did we lose you?
Oh, sorry. I just froze for a minute there. So sorry.
It's okay.
Apologies. I think I'm back, but I see we are coming up to the bottom of the hour. I was so busy taking notes that I've lost track of time. And this was just an outstanding conversation. And so I appreciate everyone being here. Julia, I'll turn things back over to you to wrap us up.
Thank you so much. Receiving a lot of questions, additional questions but we only have 1 minute, Kelley. So I guess the major one, what's the best way to support you for everyone watching? Kelley?
Oh, sorry.
The age of AI.
Again. Oh,
Yeah,
sorry,
I'll
Julia.
repeat it. Yeah, I'll repeat the question. What's the best way to support you for everybody who's watching
The best way to support, sorry,
your work?
my work?
Yep.
So, well, I mean, I do think that what everybody was, I love the idea of sort of just testing and having a hypothesis and just go ahead and do that. So I think we all need to continue to, test and move quickly and make sure that we're leveraging great communities like this one to learn from one another so that we can put these things into action in the field. And sorry, bad time for my internet to get a little wonky. So hopefully that answers that question there.
No worries.